Is that going to be an okay chair for you?
Yeah, it's all right. It'll be all right. It will be all right.
I got to get my eyes all the way open.
You know, I had the eye doctor tell me the other day that I have the very beginning of cataracts.
That's frustrating.
And I can't tell it at all. He said, you're just starting. He's no big, you know, my dad had them and had them removed. And, boy, he said it was just miraculous how he could see afterwards.
The stuff that they can do these days,
Yeah,
whether
really,
they're doing
really,
the laser correction or the...
Yeah. But I thought, my word,
They can give you like a new cornea. They can do like all
yeah,
kinds
they
of
can.
stuff.
They can go in and put those crystals into your eyes. I knew a lady that she would go often, and they would put these crystals in there. She was losing her vision, and it was really kind of fascinating.
Maybe that's why there's like this movement to worship crystals, because they're just, maybe that's the healing power after all.
Oh, no. I don't know why. I think that's just a terminology. I don't know why they call them that, but maybe they look like a crystal or something.
Well, should we greet the people? Here we are.
Greet the people.
We're back on Monday morning.
We are.
Pun intended, because Pastor had back. You had a procedure done.
Yeah, I did.
11 days
I
ago or
did.
so.
Yeah.
But you've already made a full recovery. You told me you walked, 14 miles
Yeah,
yesterday.
Yeah, lifting weights,
Yeah.
doing back bends.
He can do a bridge.
Yeah.
Well, that was because you've got less material there now, right? So you're even more flexible,
I'm telling
right?
you, yeah, it really is miraculous what they can do.
So I looked this up because you talked about it some yesterday. You said it was a laminectomy?
Yeah.
So I went on.
They laminate you.
That's
what they do.
just send you through the machine. You're like Han Solo
You're
encased in
flattened
lamination.
out. Yeah.
And I looked it up and I was actually with my daughter. I was out on my back porch and I was just watching surgery videos.
Oh, do they have that on there? I'd like to go and see that.
I figured you would have already. No, yeah,
I hadn't even thought about it.
Bro, I can't believe I just called you bro. I don't think that's ever happened in like 5.5 years. I've been hanging out with Jared too much. No, but it was one of those like dude kind of moments. You're watching it like, I can't believe how much stuff is on YouTube. Like they've got everything.
They do.
And they showed how they go in, how they isolate the area, how they actually, at least for this particular procedure, like they only go through a tiny tube.
Right.
And all of the instruments go in and they just remove the bad material and then you wake up and the pain's gone.
Yeah, well, they went in about like that on me.
Oh, okay.
They just
cut
it open
much?
and pulled it back. Yeah, it was about a 2.5 hour surgery, which is not that long, when you think about it.
Right.
But they just had to lay me open, and because
there was that much pressure.
He said it was. Well, the medical term he used to Debbie he said, "This is horrible."
Horrible in Latin.
So anyway, but hey, I feel great. I really do feel great.
Yeah,
I just am not supposed to bend, twist, or lift anything. And I don't want to mess up what he's done because I can get up in I can now turn over in my sleep and not wake myself up in pain. Used to be every time I would turn over in the night, I would wake up and I would have to think through how can I turn with minimal pain and then get up in the morning.
Yeah.
Man, I get up out the bed, no trouble now.
That's beautiful.
It really is. It's wild. It's very helpful. I didn't tell anybody. I don't know if I told you, but on the Christmas Eve here, I got here early. Nobody was in there, but one choir member and one orchestra guy was in there, and the lights were all dim and everything. I don't guess you guys were even in there. And I fell down those side
Somebody
steps.
told me about that.
And I just sat there for a moment, and I thought, I actually thought, maybe I chipped away all that stuff in my back. Maybe I twisted and it all went away. But I tried to get up, and I thought, no, this didn't help anything at all.
Well, I'm sorry you've had to suffer with it for so long. But praise the Lord for the medical technology where you're
it's just
feeling better.
amazing. It really is what they can do, what they're able to do.
So you got to take it easy from the lifting standpoint, but you're walking a lot because you're getting ready for this trip that's coming up.
Yeah.
You said you're not allowed to lift more than 5 pounds, so I told you don't bring your study Bible today. We know how hefty those can get.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, you're getting yourself ready to hopefully make this trip and make a good one out of it.
Yeah, the sad thing is that I can't do anything as far as, and I don't want to mess up what they've done because what they've done has been so helpful. But my wife has got the lift.
You've got to have her lift everything.
The luggage, which it just goes against everything within me. And of course, every day she goes through the lecture. She's been doing this for a month. Every day is the lecture. You cannot lift. You're going to have to let me do this. I know you. Da. So, but thank the Lord, there are a couple of good guys. Mike,
strapping.
Mike and Cynthia going with us, and so I asked I said, Mike, I might have to have your help. Don't worry about it. Cynthia can handle it. So,
thank you, Miss Cynthia, in advance. Well, it's only for 6 weeks or so.
Yeah,
then you
just
get
for
back
6 weeks, and then I get back, and then I head to Moldova. I preach on a Sunday morning. Well, I'm preaching on a Sunday morning. I get on plane that night, fly to Houston, get on Turkish Airlines, and fly to Istanbul.
Yeah.
And from Istanbul to
Moldova,
to the capital, to the airport there is just an hour flight. So I'm going to go there. I'll get in there on Monday, and I will get on a plane Thursday, and I will head back here.
Wow, so you're not even going to miss a Sunday with going to Moldova?
No.
Oh, wow, what a week that's going to be.
I'm going to work on the plane, on a sermon. I'm going there. I'm going to go see where we're planting a church.
Yeah.
We just had a pastor and his wife who's over that we're working with.
Pastor Edward,
Yeah, that we're working with them. And of course, Ross and Brenda
They're going on that trip?
They're going to be there.
Oh,
and we've got a group that's already going to be there.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'm just not going to be able to go with them because I'm not going to miss a Sunday. So.
Because that'll be Palm Sunday you'll be coming back for. Excuse me, Palm Sunday.
Yeah, from Egypt. Yeah, I'll be back for Palm Sunday.
Okay.
Anyway.
Wow. That's a busy schedule.
So I'm going to see the seminary there. The IMB has I've had several of them up there that said, please, we're coming in. We want to meet you if you'll meet us at the seminary. And so we have places that are training people from places we don't need to talk about that are being sent out that most Baptists don't know about. And that's why you support the cooperative program. Amen. And that's why we give, and that's why we go. And I didn't even realize that they had a school there, but they do, and so I'm going to go and see it.
That's a great reminder, Pastor, of everything that's going on behind the scenes. There's all kinds of people who want to complain about what's happened denominationally, but especially in secure countries. There's such great work being done that we can't really know about.
Yeah.
That's actually a great thing to just park on for a second, because we just finished up one mission.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick was here last week.
By the way, did you know, and I did not know until yesterday afternoon with Dr. Kelly, yesterday was the 20th anniversary. I wished I had known it.
Cindy Warner told me right before the service, I was like, yeah, I'll say something, but you know how it is.
Yeah,
I completely forgot.
Sure.
So I need to do like a Facebook, but actually, Joanna, let's talk about doing a Facebook post of the walking to the new building.
The first service here, and it was on World Mission Day.
So
20 years ago. And he said that they coordinated it where it would fall on World Mission Day.
And it was.
Jared's the church historian. So
and it was leaked.
He's the one who
Jared, get on AI and generate us some images of what happened on that day.
I have actual footage.
I know you did. Jared has all the footage. That's how he made. That's how he made that video. So we actually did show. I mean,
we did.
It.
That's
we
what I
just
said.
didn't mention it. Yeah.
We didn't. I told him. He said that's what triggered his thought.
Yeah.
Was when he saw the video. He said it hit me. It's 20 years ago today, exactly the 7th of March.
That's crazy. That it came on a Sunday again. That's so. Oh no! Wait, no. Sorry. Yeah, right. Because it was on February 29th, is what Cindy said. Because that was the Sunday then. So it's 20 years to the Sunday.
Yeah.
But we need to text Cindy and get those pictures. She had like dozens of pictures on her phone that she was showing me. Some of them I hadn't even seen before. So
it was leap year back then too, just like it was leap year this year.
Yeah, 20 years ago. So yeah,
29th
five leap years ago,
Wow.
5 Olympic years ago.
Wow.
So 20th anniversary, and you could see they were carrying the flags for the church. Neither you or me were there at that time.
That's right. I didn't even think. I saw them and I thought, well, isn't that neat? They've got all these flags out there.
It was a missional thing for them, though. Like, hey, this is us going to this new building, this new property. This is going to assist us in accomplishing the mission that the Lord's given us.
Yeah.
And now here we are. Now we call it One Mission. They used to call it World Reach, which I still say World Reach sometimes. Now we call it One Mission.
It doesn't matter.
It's a unification of all the mission efforts that we're doing. Patrick did a great job. It's great to see that all the missionaries that came in. Well, I got to hang out with the church planters from San Diego on Saturday.
Okay. What about the guy from Las Vegas? Was he here?
Yeah, Jack Diven. He was here.
Is that the guy you were talking to that morning, the blonde hair?
Yeah, I always have to talk to people that have cooler hair with me just to check in with them.
I wanted to grab him because I'm going to be out there preaching in Las Vegas.
Oh, cool.
On a Sunday, and I want to get over there to see him. Anyway. So we wanted to meet him, and I regret we did not get a chance.
Yeah, he had to leave early because they're still in these preview Sundays.
Right.
So there was no way that he could miss one because he hasn't been able to delegate a lot of things yet. But it's really interesting. I asked him about how they came to the name of their church because you've probably seen it's all capital letters, Your Church, Y-O-U-R. And I was like, that seems a little bit like seeker-sensitive kind of thing. Like, why is it focused on the person? And he was like, I know what you're thinking. That's not what it is. It's actually, and I forget, it was one of the Psalms that he said when it was talking about, this is your people, O God. So it's really, it's a God word. Yeah.
Okay.
It's your church, O God. So I thought that was that was really cool to connect with him. He's a former worship pastor. I guess that's where the hair comes from. So now he's in there as a church. I know, right? So now he's playing. So I'm really excited. That's a 4th generation church plant. There was a church that planted a church that planted a church, and now he's planting out of that one. So there's some really cool stuff happening in Las Vegas.
That's neat.
Where are you going to preach when you go out?
I can't think of the name of the church, and right now the guy's name, I'm so embarrassed, escapes me as well. It was a church where there was an 80-something-year-old pastor. They just bought a big parcel of land out on the interstate. Great vision from a man of that age. They've paid it off.
Great.
He got up and told the congregation, I'm going to retire, and you need to call Mac Brunson to be your next pastor. Well, they called me, and I'm thinking, dude, what now? What did you say?
Wow. So when are you resigning
So I had
from
to call
Valley
the pastor and tell him, I'm so honored. Thank you. That's how kind of you. And I said, but I am where God wants me to be. But let me give you a name. And I gave him the name of a guy, great guy, good guy. And I'm just, it's just, I'm blaming it on the anesthesia. Still got me in a brain fog.
Yeah.
But he's invited me to come out and preach, and I felt like, well, that's something I should do. So I'm going out there to preach, and I'm going to go to see the church plant that we're working with.
Good. Yeah.
And it's our 45th anniversary at the same time.
Oh, your wedding anniversary.
Wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So I'm going to take my wife to Vegas, and we're going to walk the streets and see what we can see.
Pull a couple of slots. What? Hit the blackjack tables. When is? I forget when y'all's anniversary is. Is that
August 5th.
August 5th.
Yeah.
Okay. I have to plan on that. I'll put that in my notes.
I asked her the other. I said, "Well, where do you want to go for your 45th wedding?" Well, we're going. You're preaching, and
Sin City, baby.
Oh gosh, that's what I did my whole time when the kids were growing up. Everywhere. Where are we going on vacation? Well, I'm preaching here, so we'll go and we'll, y'all can go and sit in the motel room, and I'll go preach every night. It was really, I feel sorry for my kids that I did them that way.
I'm sure you went to some cool spots, though.
Yeah, I was invited to preach at a lot of neat places, like on the Outer Banks and, Myrtle Beach.
Turn it into a vacay.
Yeah.
Hey, my dad was all about that, too. I'm trying to think of a few family vacations. We'll say that for a different podcast. So one thing I thought was, we could talk a little bit more about yesterday. One thing I thought was interesting is the Lord really, when we were preparing all the music, really led me to that text in Psalm 105, like how important it is to remember the past. when I was getting that together, I wasn't even thinking of what's happening there in Ephesians chapter 2, because that was one of the first things you emphasized is how we're supposed to remember. We're supposed to think of what Christ has done for us. I think is it in verse 11? You actually gave us the
verse
Greek
11
one.
and verse 12. Yeah.
Yeah, verse 11 and 12. My Greek pronunciation is awful.
It's mu, eta.
I wrote it down.
May, Omicron, nu, epsilon.
He's spelling
epsilon,
it. That's what Pastor's doing for us right now.
Omicron, upsilon, nu.
Okay.
It is a difficult word to say.
Yeah.
Some of these words in the Greek are so hard. It's Memonuo. That's it.
Well, and it was interesting. It was interesting because yesterday you were like, and I'm going to tell you what that word is, and ironically, you almost forgot it because the word is to remember.
Yeah.
He's searching for it.
I see the humor.
There was some. Yeah. Well, from time to time, I like to engage in a
that.
little light joking around. So. It says, therefore remember that at one time you Gentiles in the flesh, you okay?
Yeah.
Called the uncircumcision by what is called the So you're supposed to remember what happened in the past, and then remember how you were separated from Christ. And you taught, and so let's talk through that again, like the utility of remembering who you were.
Well, this is kind of funny. You got a Jew who is on the mission field, but he's in prison in Rome. And he's writing back to the mission field, Ephesus, to these Gentiles, and he's telling them, remember, formerly, the Gentiles in the flesh who were called. It's almost like I'm trying to poke you, to wake you up with this pejorative term.
Yes,
which to rouse you to remember. You were the uncircumcised.
So, and that was so important that you pointed that out to us, because I didn't understand that this was a pejorative term.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. It's worse than any word you could use today that would be a racial slur. That was the racial slur of that day.
When you say y'all are uncircumcised, and when they say it back, they turned it into it
back on the Jews as you're disgusting because you are circumcised.
It's interesting it was a couple of years ago, and I was reading the biblical account of David and Goliath to the kids, which in a lot of ways is very different from like what you might read in the story Bible. And one thing that David says over and over about Goliath is like, I can't believe this uncircumcised Philistine. Why are we bowing to this uncircumcised Philistine? So this is just like that continuation of that language for
totally
thousands of years.
Lost, totally pagan, totally without any redeeming values, we would say. There's nothing redeeming about the uncircumcised. And in fact, that was the whole Jewish thought is that God made Gentiles like we go out and cut wood, get a cord of wood. Why? To throw it in the fire, to burn fire. So that's what the Gentiles were. To the Jews, is they were sticks of wood to be thrown into the fires of hell.
They had a very healthy doctrine of reprobation, it seems.
Boy, I'm telling you.
That is amazing. So Paul is trying to hearken them back to like, remember how you were divided, and then, but
he said you were completely alienated, not just from God. You were alienated from everybody.
And now the complete opposite is true. There's been this complete reconciliation.
Yeah, and that's what we come to this Sunday, where the wall has been torn down.
Dividing wall of hostility, yes, verse 14.
It's been torn down.
Christ himself, who is our peace. I'm actually really excited about that. But I'm not going to do that to you. We don't need to talk about next week's message yet. One thing I thought was super helpful, and I saw you go in this way, and so I started jotting down some extra notes. We talked about the 5 ways that people are alienated. And it's just these 5 phrases right in a row. So helpful. It's so helpful to see it. Separated from Christ.
Yeah.
Excluded from Israel. Yeah. Which do you want to drill in on that?
Well, what he's doing here is it's almost, he says, remember, and then he comes back again and he says in verse 12, remember. He's going to say, you've forgotten.
Yes.
And that was the whole point of my making the statement that we've been saved and sanitized. We have removed all of this from our memory whatsoever. We've always been perfect little darlings. And so he's going to say, I'm going to help you remember how you were so alien. You were separated from Christ. They knew absolutely nothing about Christ. And he doesn't say separated from Jesus. He says separated from Christos, which is the anointed one. They had no idea of who the anointed one was. Excluded from the commonwealth of it. Well, you're excluded. You're outside of the nation of Israel, so you would never know. Well, because that information had been given to them.
And I want to talk about that a little bit because I feel like today in our church culture, I might be getting this wrong, but I feel like people in general kind of feel like, well, yeah, we're part of Israel. This is just part of who we are, which, I mean, like we talked about when you're doing some of Romans, like there's a sense in which that's
we're
true.
Grafted in.
We're grafted in, but it wasn't always like that.
That's exactly right.
People read the Old Testament, they're like, yeah, I'm right there with you. No, you weren't.
Yeah,
I mean, like, you weren't part of that nation of Israel.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have a concluding statement there. I guess I just want to point that out.
Well, the good thing is, if you want to go back to Romans, is we've been grafted in. We are now,
yes.
God's people.
Right. That is true.
Now, there is still, and I am very cautious, I don't believe in, replacement theology that the church has replaced Israel.
Right.
I do not think that at all.
Okay.
I mean, there is a very big part of Israel that is going to be saved. They're not going to be saved differently than we are, but they're going to be saved. The door is shut on them right now, which is hard to rationalize or it's hard to talk about it, but the door's shut on them right now. But it's open to us, the Gentiles.
That's exactly what Paul says verbatim. Yeah.
And, the thing is there's going to come a day when God's going to take the church out of here and the door to the Jew is going to be open wide, and they're going to turn by the tens of thousands, the hundreds of thousands to Christ. And, glorious day. God will save his people. God will be true to his word. Whether you like it or not, he's going to save Israel.
I'm just excited that you're going to Revelation after you finish Ephesians.
Well, Rick Burgess messed me up on that.
That's true. Yeah, so he is. Yeah, you guys tune into Rick's Wednesday Bible study.
Yeah, if you go back and pick up his Bible study, I am certain that it's far better than anything I can do. But anyway, so they were excluded. They're strangers to the covenants of promise. That is all the covenants that we get in the Old Testament. They have no hope.
No hope. No hope.
And I talk about seeing these catacombs in Rome. Yeah. Out of the city of Rome, you can go down in the catacombs. And I was thinking about that early this morning on the way here. That. I said yesterday that that's as dark and as dank and as smelly and as weird and as spooky as you think it is.
Yeah.
To go down in there.
Super weird.
Man, if the lights go off, you're in trouble.
It's fascinating to think about how the early church would meet down there just because it was so weird.
And can you imagine them singing a Christological hymn just above a whisper so that they would not be heard? How could you worship in such confining, place, like that? But they did, because it was the only place they could worship. They would go to the worst situations to worship because they had an earnest, heartfelt desire to worship. We have one of the finest facilities of any church anywhere.
Yeah, we do.
And you have a difficult time getting up out the bed and coming to church on Sunday.
That just shows the condition of the human heart. But it also shows how the fires of persecution can rightly sanctify people.
Yep.
It can make you desire the most important thing.
Yes. And then the final fifth thing was that they were without God.
Without God, which that encompasses
They knew all these gods. Now here's the irony of it. They knew all these gods, but they were without God. That's what I'm thinking about as I head to Egypt.
Yeah, and you talk some about it. Like I actually did a little bit of reading this morning about like Egypt's culture of death. Now you said you're going to talk about this in a later message. Is that right?
I think I may do it on Palm Sunday. Okay. So just hang loose with me. Right. I don't know that I'm going to go back to Ephesians on Palm Sunday, but I think I'm going to do. I've just got. Listen, have you? Well, Jared, you've been there. To Israel. Yeah. You remember when we came into Israel and we came around and you look up the Mount of Olives and off to the left of the Mount, to the right of the Mount of Olives, you've got nothing but cemetery.
Yeah.
All that mountain away. That was already cemetery when Jesus was alive. Yeah, they had already been planting people on that hillside back then. So Jesus literally comes down beside a cemetery.
That is very interesting.
When he comes down the Mount of Olives, when he comes, when he rides that colt on that Sunday. And so I'm looking at the culture of death. Now, here's a great PhD.
Okay.
The culture of death, thanatos, death, in light of
the life of Christ,
theology, or whatever you want. You have to work up a idea on it, but it would be fascinating. So I'm going to look at the Egyptians because they were just obsessed with death.
Yes, they were so intent upon preparing for the afterlife that an entire economy rose up around how do you prepare.
It is just fascinating.
And apprenticeships with coffin making, and then all of their art revolved around
all of the gauze that they would wrap mummies in, all of the spices, all of the candles, all of the it just went on and on
These
and
were
on.
people's full-time
because
jobs.
It was outside of just the agrarian growing food to eat, everything else revolved around preparation of death, and usually the preparation of one man's death in particular, and that was Pharaoh.
Right, which obviously that the way that people honor the dead, especially for royalty, hasn't changed in many ways. We saw Queen Elizabeth's funeral last year. God rest her soul. So, I think. Thinking about what happened with the Egyptians and that focus wasn't so much of that it had something to do with the gods, but yet they can't please the gods.
Well, that's the whole thing, and all of these hieroglyphics that you see, if you go into, and I've been there I can't remember, 4 times already, I think, 4 or 5 times already. Anyway, you go into these temples and you always see Pharaoh coming to one of these gods. He is seen as the one who is to keep the gods happy.
Yeah, he's the mediator.
He's the one who keeps the gods happy, and if the gods are happy, then the Nile will flood. And that is what keeps them in food. And, people will have children, and children will be healthy, and your life will be, good in some kind of way, is if Pharaoh is able to keep the gods happy. So they do everything they can for Pharaoh so that Pharaoh can do everything to keep the gods happy.
Isn't that interesting that they spend all this time trying to keep the gods happy, and yet there's very little evidence that they actually can do it, right? And yet for us, our God is completely pleased in and of himself, and yet still has wonderful regard for each one of us.
Yeah.
And yet, how often do we just turn our backs?
Yeah.
And we don't even seek the pleasures of God.
Well, see, that's really the whole of. I see the first 3 chapters of Ephesians is God's extreme dedication to our salvation, to us, and then He's going to get to 4, 5, and 6, where we turn around and we express back to God our devotion, which is service.
That is
worship,
a great point.
Service that we give back to God.
You said that maybe the first week of the sermon series, and I would ask you to say that again, just to remind us, especially since our year-long theme is devoted.
Yep.
And Joanne and I are going to talk about that later today because we got to get back to that after one mission.
I will try to remember that this Sunday. But that's the whole thrust of this to me is keep looking. And I never really realized that Ephesians 1, 2, and 3 really is all this doctrine of salvation and expiation and
justification,
all of these propitiation, all of this. It is such a real study in the doctrine of soteriology. And I've read it and I've read it and I've read it, but I've never, sat down to really go through this thing like I am doing now.
Well, it's only been going through it this time that it's finally made sense to me why he ends with this big prayer and doxology at the end of chapter 3, which obviously for him, he's not writing in chapters, but it's clearly the close of a section. And then he moves on to now our relation to one another in light of what God has done for us in Christ. Well, I'm excited about it. So you want to talk for just a second about where you're going this week? Christ himself, who is our peace, bringing down the dividing wall of hostility.
Yeah, that's right. I ended in 13, didn't I? For he himself is our peace, who made both groups into one. That was the thing. He's shown now all this alienation between the Jews and the Gentiles, and now Christ has come and he's broken that barrier down. Yeah.
I was reading our good friend, what's our good friend's name? Who wrote that commentary?
We have so many of them.
Ferguson.
Oh, Sinclair.
Yeah. Sinclair, I was good friend Dr. Ferguson, reading his thing this morning. He talked about that dividing wall of hostility, and he showed how that's like at least a symbol of that dividing wall of the inner and outer court of the temple. Yeah. So good.
Yeah. If you don't, and there's great debate. Oh, Lord, they'll debate everything. There's great debate over this thing. Is that what he's referring to? Because the Ephesians would not have known it. Well, why would they not have known it? You got to explain that to me first,
right?
Because they knew everything about everything else.
Right.
Why would they not have known about one of the 7 great wonders of the ancient world? Sure, they would have known about Solomon's temple. Sure, they would have known about Herod's rebuilding the temple and that Gentiles just could not walk in there. In fact, they have found 2 of those barriers, 2 of those signs that say, any foreigner, do not enter here. If you enter here,
penalty of death.
You are under the penalty of death right then. Yeah. They found 2 of those signs.
Yeah.
One of them happens to be in Istanbul.
Wow, that's fascinating.
You're kind of thinking, well, gosh dang, how in the world did that thing end up there? But it's in the museum in Istanbul. In fact, I've even thought about taking an extra day on the way back to stop at Istanbul from Moldova and go to the museum and go to the Hagia Sophia. And I've always wanted to go, but I think I'm going to wait. And I think maybe next year when I go to Israel, I'm going to go to Istanbul and spend a couple of nights.
You need to pull a Nicolas Cage and just steal some of that stuff and bring it back so we can look at it.
I know.
That would be great.
Anyway.
It is fascinating that stuff exists. It's fascinating that in that different culture, and this is such a great illustration, but the temple was almost like a foreign embassy.
Yeah.
Like when you walk in, you're under a completely different law.
Yeah.
And if the Jews want to go ahead and take your life, well, that's their right. And Rome's kind of like, all right, well, they warned you.
They would do it. Well, they would do it in a mass mob. See, they go to do that to Paul because they think that Paul went in there with an Ephesian.
Right. Right.
They think that he took an Ephesian Gentile into the temple and they just mob him to kill him.
Yeah.
And the Romans that are there, the Praetorian is built like this to the one side of the wall of the temple. And they do it so that they can look over and see what's going over in the temple. They see him being mobbed. And so here comes a Roman centurion and his soldiers, and they run in there. Is this not fascinating? Jews about to kill a Jew.
Yeah.
And who saves that Jew?
A Roman.
The Romans.
It is
and
amazing.
They get him out of there. And who does that Jew happen to be? Paul. Well, what are they going to do with it? We got to get him out of here. We don't have enough. These people are going to riot, and they're going to storm the Antonia fortress. We got to get. So they send this massive delegation. They've got cavalry, they've got foot soldiers, and all of this, and they're taking Paul up to Caesarea Philippi, and they're going to put him in jail there, where Felix is. Not the cat, but he was a cat, Felix, and he's going to go to Rome to share the gospel.
That's backing up for a second. That's really helpful thinking about how the people would swarm. They would have this killing as a mass mob, and then it's kind of like, well, who's Rome even going to blame about it? Well, it was just all.
They'll go and crucify 50 of them, but they can't get them all. They can't do them all. So.
Oh boy, that is something else. Those were different times, and yet, in many ways, the same times.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've come to the end of our time, Pastor. This is always so fun. I'm glad that you're back. Glad that you're getting healthy. I can tell that the fire has returned. Make sure you don't lift anything.
twist.
Let Miss Debbie do all the twisting and the lifting.
Yeah, I will. And the bending.
And
I can't bend.
Okay, well, so we just need to keep.
But
We need to just
good.
wrap you in bubble wrap and put you on the, on the
good.
planes.
It's amazing what 3
go.
pots of coffee will do for you.
Amen. Amen. All right. Well, we love you guys. The old One Mission is done, so we're back with normal Wednesday night programming this week, and Pastor's back on the mound this Sunday. And remember to turn your clocks back on Sunday. Anything else, Johanna, that I need to say? That's right. Study of Joshua in the worship center.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's a great book.
Yes.
31 battles that he fought to take the land.
And they're going to cover it all in 8 weeks.
And when we turn the clocks forward this Sunday, that's
won't
it.
be
We
here?
will never turn it back again.
Are you sure about that?
No, I'm just.
I was like, that law has been in the Senate a long
It just
time.
would make sense to just leave
Wouldn't
the
it
thing
make
alone.
perfect sense?
Let's get on this time coming up and stay
When was
on it.
when was the last time this world's made sense, Pastor?
In 1957.
Was that when you were born?
That was
Yeah,
when I
that's
was
right. Yeah, everything was good till Pastor was. Say goodbye, Pastor.
Goodbye, Pastor.
Now get up.
Good.
Limp